want to talk about how the slave trade began. And it actually began in the 15th and 16th century. Europe was expanding, and frankly, Europeans were planning to take over the entire globe. And they needed a justification for what they were about to do to the rest of the world.
The European had gained enough knowledge and had enough guns, and he had been hungry enough within the body of Europe until he decided that he was going to go out and take the world, be it round or flat. In order to understand the religious basis of racism, we have to go back to a papal bull that the Pope issued in 1455 in an argument between Portugal and Spain. He turned to them impatiently and said, "You are both authorized to reduce to servitude all infidel people." And it just so happens that most of the so-called infidels were non-European people, non-white people. Europe not only had its basis for racism, it had its basis for the slave trade, and this same basis would be good in the colonial system that followed. Racism was created to justify the slave trade, to justify the colonial system, and to justify the utter ruthlessness that had to go into the making of modern capitalism.
And again, they had to justify it because Africans, in fact, created the first civilization, ended up teaching the Greeks and all of these other European nations how to become civilized. The Moors went into Spain and built the first university system. It's a contradiction to say, okay, these are the people who taught us what we know, but yet they're inferior to us. So they had to create this concept of race, of racial hierarchy, and likewise start to wipe out that history, start to effectively delete it from the history books and not speak of it whatsoever. So the connection to capitalism is slavery was designed to build wealth for European nations. This system led to what is now modern capitalism, because again, America built its primary wealth off of slavery, from not having to pay for labor for 200 to 300 years. In closing, slavery didn't begin primarily because of hate, it began because of greed, and racism and racial hierarchy was just the excuse to justify slavery.